We got confirmation a couple days ago that it's all systems go. That is what Conor McGregor told ESPN today, which is why we are back again with another video discussing what is going on with Conor McGregor and this Michael Chandler matchup. Now, obviously, you guys know this matchup has been being talked about since early last year when they were announced as coaches of The Ultimate Fighter. That season began being filmed and started to air around the summer of last year, and we were aiming to probably have Conor McGregor return around that period of time, maybe August, September period. And then we had it pushed back from there. We were thinking maybe December we were going to see Conor step back in the octagon. That's kind of when we were talking about. But then it never ended up coming. We were talking maybe 300. That's what we were looking at as possible return date for Conor. Conor said he wanted 300. You see lots of talk about it. Doesn't end up happening either. You also see Conor in December post that video saying he was going to fight Chandler in the summer. But you also had Dana White come out and say that that was not true, that that fight was not going to happen in the summer. So there's been a ton of rumors, of speculation, of questions surrounding this fight. And it all kind of culminated into this week where McGregor is on press tour for his new movie with Jake Gyllenhaal, Roadhouse. And he's speaking about this fight whenever he's asked about it, and you can tell that there's a lot of frustration. He's mentioning Hunter Campbell, who is kind of the UFC's wingman when dealing with these tough contracts. They'll send him out to go talk with these fighters and negotiate when they can't seem to get a deal done. And you even had Nate Diaz chiming in and tweeting that it was a similar situation to what was happening with him towards the end of his contract, where he had a few fights remaining. The UFC didn't want him to be able to fight out that contract and pursue free agency, even with all the limitations that they have involved with fighters' free agency. And so you had him tweeting "Free McGregor," which you had McGregor replying to 100%. Now, that was all earlier this week. So there's been a lot of talk, a lot of speculation, like I already said. But in this interview today, you don't see frustration out of Conor. You don't see him mentioning, get Hunter Campbell out here, let's get something done, I'm itching to fight. He says, confirmation, where all systems go. He said that he's had a sparring session in his home octagon with one of his training partners to get ready for this fight already. And it seems like we're making progress towards actually getting this fight booked. Now, are we? That's really only going to be told truly when we have this fight on paper. And even then, with how many fights Dana's been announcing before we actually have a serious contract signed on either side, you don't even know then, because anything could happen. I mean, how many times do we get Tony Habib on the books before something crazy happened for them to pull out? And both those guys were actually signing all of those contracts. So obviously anything could happen, but I would say that this is the closest to having this fight booked that we have for a while. And he was asked if it would be Chandler, and he did say yes to that. He didn't seem super enthused about it being Chandler, but he does seem frustrated by how incessantly Chandler is pursuing this fight. So that's sure to kind of stir up the emotions that have already been building between these two over the immense build up to this fight that we've been doing since essentially November of 2022, when Dustin beat Chandler, was when we really started talking about this matchup seriously. But even before that, you've had these two jarring at each other. I think maybe even before Chandler KO'd Tony, there was probably talks about it, but I know that it seriously started around that point in time. Seeing Conor say that there's a confirmation on his end is exhilarating, though. Even as somebody who's probably one of Conor's lowest tiers of fan in terms of the MMA fan base, I'm not a huge fan of the guy. I think his antics outside of the cage have been obnoxious as of late, and him fucking with Mike Chandler, who, love him or hate him, think he's cringe or not, he is a super exciting fighter that I'd love to see in the octagon against a ton of guys. Just keeping him on the couch is really lame too. But I love to see McGregor fighting. I love when I go to work and my coworkers are talking about fight sports and asking me about MMA. I love when casuals are getting more interested in the sport, and there's people who are watching who don't always watch. And you get that when Conor McGregor fights. He's tremendous for the sport. He's one of the best advocates for the sport that we have right now, which sucks to say because of all the antics that he gets into. But people listen when Conor McGregor speaks, and an active McGregor who is winning fights would be something incredible for the sport to have once again. I would love to see him return and beat Michael Chandler. I don't think that that's going to happen, though. I think that his head pulled too many other places. He's really more of a figure outside the octagon now than he is a fighter inside of it. And Michael Chandler has probably been doing nothing but training for Conor for like 2 years now since this fight's been building up. Now, granted, he is old, right? He's getting up there, especially for lightweight, but so is Conor, and he's coming off of a terrible injury, whereas Chandler is not. So I do think as well still that Chandler has the upper hand in that matchup, but you never know. It's a crazy sport, and Conor could come back super hungry and knock our socks off. We've seen incredible returns from people who are legends in the sport before, and like I said, love him or hate him, Conor is definitely a legend of the sport. So more than anything, what I hope that this brings is some clarity around this, even if we end up getting this booking pushed back and we don't end up seeing Conor fight until next year or the end of this year. I would just like it to be clear what's happening. Just know that, hey, there's a contract dispute going on between him and the UFC, kind of like what we knew when Francis wasn't fighting. That was kind of what was going on. It would just be really great to know, and obviously we have some more clarity in that he's going through a contract dispute. That much seems pretty clear, but this seems like a huge step forward in terms of clarity, especially if he does actually have something serious behind the books, and we see any sort of corroboration between Chandler on this information. But he's been saying that this fight is good to go for months because he's just so desperate to have it booked. Confirmation from the UFC brass in some way would make me feel a lot more confident that this matchup's actually getting put together. But how do you guys feel about this matchup? Do you think that we're going to see Conor McGregor return to the octagon in 2024? And if not, is he ever going to return to the octagon again? When he does come back, do you think that he's going to be fighting Michael Chandler? And is it going to be at 185 pounds? He dismissed that and said that it was a joke. But if it's not at 155, is it going to be at 170? Are they going to do that 165 belt crazy shenanigans that have been discussed as well? Comment your thoughts around this situation down below. Leave a like if you liked, and don't forget to sub for more. Thanks and peace.